believe it or not, there are people who run way faster than us and are way better at running. This episode, we're talking about runners that we admire. And I'll preface this episode by saying I don't really follow professional sports at all, even including running. Like I don't watch any of the London Marathon or Berlin Marathon or any of these. Do you watch those?
I watch highlights of the costume parts usually, like London Marathon. Oh, today the group of 10 people ran dressed up as Stonehenge, world record, and that's usually all I watch.
Five people dressed up as Stonehenge.
They have, I guess, London Marathon's famous for many costumed world records, and there's one for biggest like group costume or fastest group costume. So one year people dressed up as Stonehenge and I think they were Stonehenge and they ran in a circle. One year they were like a train and lots of people running as the same costume together for the whole marathon.
But what I want to know is, did the runner Stonehenge actually work like a calendar?
I think so. I think that's how they made their training plan. I just learned a lot
Okay,
about
well,
Stonehenge I didn't know.
let's jump into our list. My first one that I like to mention is this is how little I actually follow professional sports. I only know about these people because people talk about them. But the fastest guy in the world is Kelvin Kiptum, who has the record. I knew his record was 2 hours 35 seconds, and he's from Kenya. I should say he was from Kenya because I didn't know this either. But he passed away just over just under a year ago in a tragic car accident, February 2024. And I had confused him with Eliud Chip. Oh, I screwed it up. Eliud Kipchoge, and he was the previous world record holder at Berlin 2022 Berlin Marathon. He had a record of 2 hours 1 minute and 9 seconds. And I had originally had Kipchoge on my list because I met a random guy in a marathon, so it's Ulaanbaatar Marathon, who had met Kipchoge in person without knowing it. So he was living in Kenya and he got into running and he was running with some groups and clubs and stuff like that. And then one day he talked to just like you know how you talk to random runners. And then he went over and talked to his group of friends and they were like, what was he like? What was he like? What was he like? He was a guy. That was Eliud Kipchoge, the fastest runner in the world. And he was like, oh, well, he was very modest. He certainly didn't seem like a worldwide celebrity. Yeah, so that is my first runner that I admire is Kelvin Kiptum because he's the fastest. And originally it was Kipchoge because he is modest.
Oh, yeah,
I was
actually, I
confused.
almost had both of those on my list, both of those great runners. I changed it last minute. But yeah, Kelvin Kiptum's very tragic story last year. Everyone's very
Mm,
shocked. He was really young. Some people say the biggest what if in the history of the sport because he still had a lot of head of him and could
mm.
have potentially been the first official sub 2 marathon. And yes, so very, very tragic. But he still holds the record for now. So yes, I definitely have those two up there on my lists, but not quite in the top five, maybe six and seven. For
Honorable
me,
mentions.
my yes, exactly. My my first person I'll mention today, my number five, I guess, is a runner from Ethiopia, and he's very famous mostly for setting a world record and winning the Olympic marathon with no shoes. And
I've heard of
so
that guy.
in 1960, Beli Bakila is his name, and I learned a lot more about him preparing for this. But he had his life story is very interesting, but most famous for getting to the Olympics in Rome in 1960, not even being the top runner in Ethiopia because his teammate was expected to be better, but his teammate got sick and stayed home, and
Mm,
Bakila decided to just kind of go out there with no shoes because his shoes had worn out, and he was worried that new shoes might give him blisters. In a recent episode, I said similar things about running the Seoul Marathon, but I did not set a world record, nor did I win the race, nor did I really have a comfortable time. But he rocked it and made history. Was the first runner from Ethiopia to win the Olympic marathon, and according to the articles I read, was one of the first runners to really put, I guess, East Africa on the map in terms of really being competitive distance runners. And now everyone thinks a lot of Ethiopia and Kenya are top runners in the world. Many people are well aware of that, but back then people didn't quite know that how good the running program was there and how it's grown since then. So he's very respected for that. But 4 years later, he was also the first Olympic marathoner to defend his title and won again. But he wore shoes the second time, as far as I know. So it didn't quite make the news like the first time. And I guess unfortunately, another tragic car accident when he was still pretty young, a few years after, maybe 5 years after his second win, he was also in a car accident and he, I guess, lost the use of some of his limbs and he ended up switching to compete in archery and table tennis
Wow.
for the rest of his life, which unfortunately was also cut short because of the accident. But yeah, he continued to play sports through that. So I really respect his dedication to sports and bare feet.
I had first heard about that runner because during the Seoul Marathon that you and I did without either of us knowing it, I think we were both there. I saw you and I didn't
But
even know it was you,
yes,
because you're the Patrick the Starfish.
yeah,
Is that his name?
yeah.
And I was running with an Ethiopian barefoot runner who approached me because I was wearing barefoot shoes, and that was the closest thing that he had seen. And so we were running and chatting, and then he said that in Ethiopia there's a whole club of people who run just to show their respect to that runner, even now, like
Oh
65 years
wow.
later. My next one is David Goggins. Do you know this guy?
Oh, how did I forget David Goggins?
So I don't watch sports, but I do read books. And David Goggins is an author of a book called Can't Hurt Me, which is about how tough he is, basically. And he started off as just a regular guy. He was kind of overweight and couldn't really do anything. And then he was just like, screw that! And just went like, turned into a superhero and became a Navy SEAL. And he's run over 70 ultra marathons, at least when he had published the book. It was over 70. It's probably like 300 now. But the guy's crazy. Like he will do crazy stuff. He did this one ultra marathon where it's a 1 mile lap 100 times. So you just run around in a circle for like 100 miles. How long would that take? That's 160 kilometers. Uh, Most people would just go crazy.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how many how many laps into it, but I appreciate him just because he's so extreme. Like he's way more far fetched than any of us ever should be. But if we can just push ourselves to go a little bit towards his direction, we'll see that our potential is much greater than what we're currently at. So I think he serves as a role model, and also like uh, there's an author called Mark Manson who says he's his spirit animal. He's almost cartoonish, but he actually does all this stuff. He I don't think he broke it, but he challenged the world record for most pull-ups within a certain amount of time. It was like tens of thousands of pull-ups, 10 a minute, and just for hours and hours and hours on end. And his hands are like all destroyed. It's and he's like broken his feet and just kept running with broken feet. And he's just so over the top, but I'm so glad he exists. If you've never read his book, there's a lot of swearing in it. At first, I was kind of confused, like, oh, why is there so many F words? And then I just flipped through it. Oh, there's at least 2 F words on every page. That's just the way he writes. So it's a very different perspective on how to do life. And he talks a lot about mental toughness and how you can apply these principles not just to athletics, but to anything in life. Like if you want to learn a language, or if you want to make lots of money, or if you want to, I don't know, be a really big social media celebrity or anything, you can use his philosophies and apply it to anything. Just don't hurt yourself.
Yeah. David Goggins, very, very inspirational person. I haven't read his books, but I listened to many podcasts, and yeah, he's very unique and very motivational. I think last time, recently in an episode, I mentioned how I broke my toe and had to kind of walk to the end. And actually, one of the mantras I had to myself alone during that ultra marathon in the mountains with a broken toe is I remember saying to myself, "Watch out, okay, David Goggins. David Goggins, where are you at?" Saying something like that, like to pump myself up, like, "Look at that. I bet David Goggins hasn't gone 100 kilometers with a broken toe dressed up as a dinosaur." Ah, and that was how I got myself through that night for part of it. Yeah, he's inspirational to us all.
And then you have a hallucination of him actually showing up, being like, "Keep going,
Yeah.
punk! I'll kick your ass."
Yeah, that would be, yeah, probably a nightmare hallucination. Yeah, thankfully I finished safely without the swearing. But yeah, very motivated runner. My next person on my list is Catherine Switzer, who is famously known for being the first official woman to run the Boston Marathon. As I was learning about her, doing some research before this, turns out she wasn't actually the first woman to do it. 1 year before, someone named Bobby Gibb did. Bobby Gibb is not one of the Bee Gees. Bobby Gibb was a is she is a runner, and she rocked it, dressing up in her brother's clothes and just running the marathon unofficially. And got through it. But
Mm.
Catherine Switzer is known for actually registering, and instead of writing Catherine, because people would kind of notice it might not be a man's name, she just put K or just and her initials. And so she got
Mm.
in, and I guess the most famous pictures are there's some pictures of some men trying to drag her off as she's running, and those have been very famous. And as I was learning more about this, that picture, one of the men, like the main man trying to grab her there, is actually the race director of the Boston Marathon, from what I was told by a YouTube video. I don't have official sources, but basically people caught on that there's a woman running this race, and before that there was people saying no, they're not physiologically capable, it's not possible, they can't do that. And photographers at first were really excited, um, and so they were all on the big, I guess, race van going past taking pictures of her. When the race director got wind of it, and he said, "You can't do this in my race, you're out of here," and tried to stop her. But fun
Catch me if you
coincidence
can.
is she was running, yeah, she was running with her boyfriend, who was apparently a football player. So one of the other pictures is a football player who's in the middle of running the marathon, cackling the race director and saying, like, "Get off my girlfriend, she's finishing this race." That's another great picture that was very cool to see. And yeah, she finished the race. And at first, of course, controversial. People thought this is not right, it's not okay. But as you know now, it's completely accepted. It took another, was it between 5 and 7 years, something like that, for a woman to officially be allowed to register in the Boston Marathon and other marathons around the world since then. But yeah, she did a very great thing for that. And yeah, so I really respect what she did and love looking at those photos.
What year was this from? Do you remember?
Oh yes, this was in 1967.
Oh wow, that's much later than I was expecting.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, not as at that point, Bakila had already won his marathon in bare feet. He had already won two
Yeah,
marathon titles, and
men
yeah,
can run a marathon in bare feet. Women should be allowed to run.
yeah. So yeah, she was next on my list, and Bobby Gibb is definitely honorable mention. If I were to write this list again, I would learn more about her and do it, because she also is a phenomenal runner and ran it in like 3 hours and 21 minutes at that time. So much faster than either of us.
3 hours and 20 minutes.
3 hours and 21. I guess Catherine
Mm.
Switzer was 4 hours, 20 minutes. Bobby Gibb was 3 hours, 21 minutes, according to the articles I read.
Both are still pretty fast. My next one is Scott Jurek. This is an ultra marathon runner from a documentary called The Game Changers. And this is a documentary about vegan athletes. So I really respect all the athletes in this documentary. They're all awesome, and it really just changes the dynamic and the paradigm of you have to eat a certain way to be an athlete. But all these athletes are amazing, and they even got better once they started eating a vegan diet. So I was vegan for a while. Nowadays, just out of practical reasons, I'm not anymore. But watching that documentary, it was one of the things that convinced me that you can eat this kind of diet and still be healthy and also perform just as well or even better. And he's got lots of records. In the documentary, they talk about how he ran the Appalachian Trail. So basically up the entire east coast of the United States. And it was 2 full marathons a day over technical terrain, and it took him 2 months. It's a lot of running, and he did it all on a plant-based diet. So yeah, that's why I respect him. Is that he shows that you can eat a plant-based diet and still perform just as well. And if you've never seen this documentary, it's actually really interesting. Not just him, but all the other guys. Like there's this one, like a strongman who's like the strongest strongman, and he just happens to be vegan.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard of Scott Jurek, and yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know he was vegan. I know he's a
Hmm.
legendary runner in the ultra world.
Yeah, pretty amazing guy.
Yes. And yeah, if you like memes about ultra running, you've definitely seen the name Scott Jurek. His name comes up quite often.
Oh really? Okay, I'll take your
Yes.
word for it.
Great, great. And my next person on my list is Yuki Kauchi, a runner from Japan who is just another legend in many ways, and he's still actively running. Him and I actually ran the same race.
Hmm.
I never met him because he was winning the race, and I was near the back in my dinosaur costume, finishing more than 3 hours later than he did. Uh, but it was in 2019, the BMO Vancouver Marathon. He set the record for the course and still holds the course record.
Hmm.
And a very interesting thing about that is he actually was not a professional runner. He was just a worker. And because of his job with the government, he's not allowed to get, or he wasn't allowed to get sponsorships or anything like that. So they called him citizen runner. And he just would go to all these races and do amazing things. Now he's gotten very popular and he has, I guess, switched to professional runner. So now he can get sponsorships and stuff. But he has a lot of very interesting facts. I will read a couple of them here, which I've prepared. So he has a Guinness World Record for the most sub 220 marathons. So the most marathons, full marathons in less than 2 hours and 20 minutes, which as of, I guess, recently, the most recent results I found is 105 times he has run a full marathon in
Whoa.
less than 2 hours, 20 minutes. Yes.
He
So,
should quit his job and get sponsorship.
yeah, so sit down. He's doing well with sponsorships. Yeah, he's very, very fast and he races quite often, like almost every couple weeks or something like that. He would do this while working full time in another job. And in his training, he also does a lot of like fun runs in costumes. And so when he runs in costumes, he also does very well and often wins. So a few interesting ones. He's running a panda onesie, and I guess according to he came second. I can't remember the exact time, but second in the race as a panda. He ran in a full business suit in 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 42 seconds for a half marathon. Yes, right. In a suit for 1 hour and 6 minutes half marathon. Yes. And he's also run dressed as a ninja in 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 52 seconds. So an
Wait a minute.
absolutely killer runner.
Aren't ninjas supposed to be faster than the salarymen?
I think that's true. Maybe that's a good point. We'll have to investigate this. There might be some misinformation now that you mention it. But yeah, Yuki is a fantastic runner.
We'll need to have a rematch. Ninja versus salaryman.
Yes. And the time was very different. I guess when they were 4 years apart, so I guess there was training in between.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that is the reason.
Yeah.
My next one is
Great.
Rich Roll, another author who wrote a book called Finding Ultra. And I really like this guy and like this book. And the reason why I like him is because he's just a normal guy. Like he doesn't have a background in running or anything. He was a swimmer in college. He was like on the college swim team. So he ended up doing Ultraman competitions as a swimming specialist. So he was really good at the swimming part, and that would give him a head start. But he was a lot older than a lot of the other athletes. He was 42 when he did his first Ultraman competition, and he had only done like a few months of training, 6 or 7 months of training, and he didn't actually win it, but he set the fastest time for all of the American athletes, and he wasn't even really an athlete. And the backstory is he is, I guess you're always an alcoholic, but yeah, he struggled with alcoholism for a lot of his life, and then how he got over being an alcoholic was replacing his alcohol addiction with another addiction. So, and that's kind of just a way to do life, right? Because there's always going to be things that you're addicted to, but you can replace addictions with better addictions. And that's the strategy. So this is a really good example of that. And he has a podcast also. It's called the Rich Roll Podcast. And the book came out over a decade ago, but it's still a really good read, Finding Ultra.
Oh, I've never heard of him before, so that is new for me. I will check out that podcast. I have heard the song, um, the one about "We're No Strangers to Love." You
What's that
know
have
the
to do with
rules,
anything?
and so do I. Full commitment's what I'm thinking of. Oh, that's Rick Roll. My apologies.
Oh, okay. Maybe there's a relation.
Yes, probably not, but apologies for the dad joke. But yeah, I will check out this podcast. Next on my list is actually a local runner, I guess local for me, but someone I've met many times around Korea. And if you run marathons around Korea regularly, chances are you've seen this person. She's kind of just like a citizen runner of Korea, but super positive and just such a good runner as well. I can't keep up.
Mm.
And her name is Mina Shin. She's a runner in Korea, and she runs every race. And even if there's like, oh, there's a
Okay.
marathon in this side of the country on Saturday, somewhere else on Sunday, she'll be at both of them. And
What if there are two on the
recently,
same day?
I think she'll try both. I remember she did like a ultra marathon, then drove across the country in the night and ran a full marathon the next day. And yeah, so yeah, I maybe if they're at the same time, probably not. But yeah, she runs everything, and on top of that, is also very fast and wins a lot of them. There's one that I
Wow.
participated in. It's 4 marathons in 4 days around Jeju Island in Korea. We run about the whole circumference of the island in 4 days, and she actually came first place every single day, which was not her goal.
Whoa.
She's not there saying, "Okay, I'm going to win," but just so positive and smiling. Oh, today I won. Oh, I also won today. Oh, I won again. Oh, look at that. I won every single day of this competition.
Like among all
And
the
very
people or just
modest
women?
among women for that one.
Okay.
Um,
That's
and
still
her
amazing.
times are very fast. Yes. One time, I remember we got the same race and she said, "Okay, let's run together. I'm gonna run slow today." And she ran in like 3 hours and 15 minutes for a full marathon, and I couldn't keep up, of course. Um, but yeah, very good runner. We recently also ran the same 100-kilometer run on a Saturday. She finished hours before I did, and then the next day she ran a full marathon in the same city. So yeah, absolutely solid runner. And after all of this, I'm not here to share a person's age, but I found out also taking age into consideration, just looking at the ages, I should be able to keep up, but I'm nowhere close. So for a runner who's a little bit older than me, she's
Hmm.
super fast. And then I found out she's also a mom. And I think as a man with no kids, I have no idea how hard it really is to raise a family. But she gave birth to them and raised them and can run amazingly all at the same time and have managed her time that well and just yeah, just rock the running world. So yeah, I really respect her as a runner.
I won't ask her specific age, but is she still in her 30s?
No,
Hmm. Okay. So probably 40s.
yes,
Okay. And that segues nicely into my next one. A runner who you've probably never heard of because he's just a guy that I know. His name is
Uh-huh.
Arco. Actually, I don't even know his full name. His English name is ARCCO. Arco is an Arco sign. He's a retired mathematics professor, and Arco sign is his favorite sign. So he made his English name after some mathematics term. Yeah, so this is the level of nerdiness that we're talking about here. But I first met him in Thailand, where we both did the same marathon, and then we are on the shuttle heading back to the town. And my time for that marathon was like still about 5 hours. And I was curious how his time was 3 hours, 41 minutes. Like, how did you run so fast? So we got talking, and he turned out to be from China. So I told him, I know I lived in China and I speak Mandarin. So we are speaking in Mandarin. And as it turns out, that was actually a pretty slow time for him. He's usually under 3 hours. And part of that was, having to get up at 2 in the morning. So that cut into his time. And maybe he just wasn't trying that hard. But I was really impressed. And it turned out that he's also in his 60s. He was 61 for that one. So that would make him 62 now. And we ended up becoming good friends. And last year I did the Yunnan Luoping Marathon, which is close to where he lives. So this is in the south of China, in Yunnan province. And that was the first marathon that I did in China. And we met up for that. And I carpooled with him from Kunming out into the boonies of Yunnan with him. We spent a few days over that weekend, and we both got the lots for the same marathon this year as of a few days ago. So I'll be going to see him again for the 2025 edition of the Luoping. What do they call it? It's like the Golden Fields Marathon, something like that. Hopefully, it won't be as foggy this year, so you'll be able to see the canola flower fields much more clearly. But yeah, he's just really fast, and his story is amazing because he didn't even start running until his 50s. He got sick, and then he decided to. His doctors recommended he start running, so he did, and then whatever illness he had, he got over it, and now he's doing like 3 hour marathons in his 60s. And he doesn't have to work anymore, so that's pretty much all he does is run. And he's super healthy. And after I met him, I stopped using age as an excuse for being slow. If he's 50% older than me and 50% faster than me, what excuse do I have to be like, oh, I'm in my 40s, that's why I'm slow? No. And he wasn't even an athlete, right? He's a mathematics professor. So it just eliminates all the possible excuses I can find for myself. And he's also a cool guy.
Wow. And so just to confirm that I heard this right, so even though he's 60, he can still run sub 3 marathons?
Yeah, yeah. He just did the
Wow.
Boston Marathon and the London Marathon. They're a week apart, right? So he did both of them sub 3 hours at 62.
Wow. Yeah, that's wow, very impressive.
So that is the runner whom I most respect. A random guy in his 60s in southern China named Arco. Who's yours?
Wow. Well, my last one is kind of similar in the sense that I guess it's a good reminder that age is not that much of a limiting factor as long as you get out there and do it. Rather than just one runner, it's actually a group I met in Korea, and they call themselves in English, they call themselves the Super Seniors. Their Korean name is the Chilsong Marathon Hyophae, the Super Seniors running groups. And if you want to join this running group, you have to be at least 70 years old. And so 70 for men, 60 for women. I guess there weren't uh, that many Korean women over 70 who wanted to join them, so they lowered the age limit. But yeah, so the first time I met them is I showed up at a small, very small race, and I hadn't run in a while, and there was an older man there who didn't look that old, and he said, "Oh well, I hurt my Achilles tendon last week. I'm still recovering, so I'll go slow and I'll pace you. What do you want to go, like 350? And I was like, whoa, whoa, what? And he said, I'm like, no, I just want to, let's like 430, 450, 5 hours is okay. But he was like ready to pace me for sub 4 hours. And then I found out he's 73 years old. And sometimes I could keep up with him, but sometimes I couldn't. He's often a pacer, and yeah, and it was shocking. And he was more than double my age, and even when he was injured, was faster than me. And now I guess we're more similar in pace. Maybe I'm a bit fitter, maybe he's a bit older. But yeah, that group in general is very inspirational. The president of their group, he was born in 1938, and 2 years ago, I got to witness his 777th full marathon. And that was when he retired from full marathons, and he was 82, 83 at that time, and every single week he would run a full marathon. And every single week after he finished a full marathon, he'd go to the office and have rice wine and be just red in the face and giggly and very positive, talking to everyone when they finished. So since he is a little bit slower now, he would start much earlier and just run the full thing and then wait for us to finish and be very supportive. Yeah, an amazing group. Some people in that group, I think, have hit 1,000 marathons now and just absolute legends. And yeah, one of them, I could talk for hours about them. I won't. I'll wrap this up quickly. Another one in that group, in 1 year, when he was 72, in 1 year, he ran 102 full marathons. And yes, they're all just monsters in the very nicest meaning of the word. Many of them grew up in like I think they lived through the Korean War. The president of the club, who was born in 1938, was born when South Korea was officially a Japanese colony, and he's lived through all of that and seen so much in their lifetimes. And I feel lucky that running has brought me to learn a lot from them. And as much as people will say it, there's proof running does not destroy your knees. There are things about running that might, but they have very healthy knees, or even in their 80s, they can keep running. But none of them are doing sub threes like Arco, but I still find them pretty inspirational. And that's the end of my list.
There you have it, people. Stop crying and get out there and run sub 3, sub 2 marathons. Even if you're 80, 100, I don't care. Stop complaining.
You'll make it.